Good afternoon, and welcome to the Voice of Wisdom. With over 60 years of experience as an investment banker, entrepreneur, investment analyst, genius economist, venture capitalist, and political analyst and strategist, Morty Davis is Wall Street and capitalism personified. The over 400 companies for which he has raised more than $3 billion over the years have created a countless number of jobs and exciting new products. Through the Voice of Wisdom, Mr. Davis explores, analyzes, and debates the most topical political, economic, and social issues facing our world today. Joining Mr. Davis today for a discussion on President Trump's big, beautiful bill is Len Carter. Len is an investment banker, business consultant, and private investor. And now, Mr. Davis and Mr. Carter.
Welcome back. My favorite hour of the week. Being together with you, my cohorts, in this podcast endeavor. I really appreciate all of you, even the ones that don't make comments, but especially the ones that bother to drop me notes or call me and tell me what you feel about the discussion we had any given week. I learn so much. I become more educated. It's like they say, teachers learn more from their students than the other way around, because it opens their minds to new ways of thinking. The rest of us all have a gestalt. We think we know it, and we assert with surety our positions. And by your questions and your criticisms, even though sometimes I find them initially hurtful, because they tend to be very pointed, and because some of you, for better or worse, have strong opinions, and if I say something that you disagree with, you come back at me and say how stupid I seem to be, how ridiculous. And then I think about it and I say, how could you possibly say that? And the more I think about it, I find some merit in the arguments you present. So I learn. It doesn't mean I change my position, but at least I become aware that there's another way to think about something. So we're back at this stage every week where we discuss the events of the week. And as I always point out, the events of the week to make the news have to be bothersome, annoying, hurtful, tragic. Good news doesn't make the front page, the headlines. That's obvious, because you don't see somebody graduated summa cum laude or their kid got better from some cancer, late stage. That doesn't make that's more meaningful than a lot of the other, much more meaningful, much more relevant to the progress of the world than somebody that just hit the sweepstakes, or some new invention, which is, at least a new invention maybe has some merit, but not every there's thousands of new inventions a week, new patents a week, and they don't all make the headlines. So to make the headlines, it has to be a very dramatic, hurtful generally, something that kills people or is so of such a nature. The killer is so awesome, so weird that it makes the front page. So by virtue of the discussion that we have every day, and some of it isn't of that nature, but it's in the political field realm where it's likewise depressing, because on one side, families have been broken up, love affairs have been broken up, divorces have occurred by differences of attitudes about our government is doing, our democracy is standing for the behavior of free speech and the criticism of the Constitution. So, we talk about the Constitution being absolutely so perfect, what a brilliant, but, under the guise of free speech, which sounds phenomenal, we have people killed now all the time. The young couple from Israel that was supposed to get engaged this week and get married shortly, that seemed to have emanated from all the free, I can't even say it, free speech that accused Jewish people of being so terrible, so bad, and so, without these people even knowing any history of the Jewish people, of the Palestinian people. The hatred has grown such that just articulating the position that they have under the guise of free speech, under the rights of free speech, creates death of other people. It's outrageous, but we can't turn off free speech because we can't find a way for people to agree who should be the monitor of that, who should decide what speech is not. I remember how upset I was years ago when the Supreme Court ruled that the what's it called? The anti-black, anti-African American
KKK.
The KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, was doing a march and advocating the destruction of the African Americans, the elimination, the total, and saying that when one professor who was well known, a Harvard professor, said that the black mind was inferior, their brains were of a different nature. And the Supreme Court said under free speech, they could hold their session, their, their public...
If they have the right to assembly.
The public assembly, right.
I mean, even the Supreme Court says hate speech is free speech.
Yeah. So we live in a world where there's human beings, and human beings being important, imperfect, important as well, imperfect. We create documents and products, weaponry that's so destructive that it threatens the very sustainability of life on Earth. I'll talk about that in a book I'm writing now, because we're moving inexorably towards the demise of human beings, the end of the existence. It's existential, the existence of human beings surviving on this earth. Anyway, I don't want to depress you further, so I'll get right into this week's session. But before I do, because it's always depressing, the subject, if it doesn't depress you, then you're miraculous. It's like somebody who doesn't get depressed if they lose somebody they love. It's literally impossible not to be depressed. What we observe every day in this, under the guise of the rules of the Constitution and the rulings of the Supreme Court. So to deal with that, I wrote a book. It's on your screen now. Happiness Guaranteed or your misery back. And at the bottom of that cover, it says, how to be happy no matter what. And I did research for more than 15 years, discovering every brilliant philosopher, every priest, bishop, cardinal, rabbi, pope, I guess psychiatrist, everybody who ever gave insights into how to be happy. And I put that in a book so we could make each other, all of us, more happy and make it a happier world. But interestingly enough, we all have the attitude, especially in the United States, that the goal of life is happiness. And the feeling about happiness, or the definition, is that you're smiling and jumping up and down. And I guess the closest we come to the reality of that is somebody who's on drugs and gets high, and they're so happy they don't know what's going on, or they're on alcohol, and they're just smiling and laughing and carrying on, and they think that's happiness. We know that's not happiness. So the definition of happiness really is more, and I mean the one we should strive for, is something like contentment, satisfaction, gratitude of our life, what our life is, of what life in general is, or gratitude for just the most common things, like getting up in the morning and being in one piece, being healthy. So it's more contentment. It's interesting. I thought about it recently, and the Bill of Rights says, what? It says, our forefathers directed our leaders, our future leaders, and our government to provide life, for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. When you think about it, they don't say the pursuit of life or the pursuit of liberty. That the government help you to provide for yourself. It can help provide for the citizenry. But happiness can provide it. It could allow the environment in which you yourself can pursue happiness. And that's the secret of this book. How you can pursue your own happiness, because you're in charge. Not the government, not anybody, but you. So before I start today's podcast and every podcast, to get away from the depression that it's going to bring, I want to give you at least one such idea. The best way to get that every day of your life, because this book has 365 pages of wisdom from the top thinkers throughout eternity, throughout human existence, throughout civilization, who have come up with their thoughts on how to be happy. The one I think of all the time is a bishop in Manhattan, a priest who wrote the book. I think he was the leader of a congregation, a church in Manhattan called the Marble something. I forget the name. But he wrote a book called The Power of Positive Thinking. And that's one of the best ways to be happy. Be positive. So no matter what goes on, be joyous. You have this moment. The past you can't change, so to focus on it, to aggravate over it, the lost opportunities, the mistake we made, the opportunities we almost had or we did have but we didn't pursue, we dropped out. I have one stock that I bought at $4 a share and I sold it at $6 a share and I thought I was doing great. It's now $700 a share. So I feel, you can imagine how stupid I feel. All I had to do was not sell it. I didn't even have to take any action. If I just did nothing, I'd have made millions of dollars. So you can have a lot of regrets every day over things that happen. So the past is history. We can't change it. Don't aggravate over it. Don't focus on it. The future is a mystery, so we can't live that mystery till we get there. We can live the present and in some ways form the basis of our future happiness and direct our lives in such a way that we increase the ability to be content, to be gratified, to be in love, to enjoy the good things of life. So please, read this book. It'll take you to a new level of contentment. Treat life every minute. I started to say, the past is history. You can't do anything about it. The future is a mystery. You don't even know if any of us are going to be there. So live in the present. And it's the present. It's called the present because it's a gift. You can enjoy every second of the present. Make up your mind you're going to be happy and not let your mind go to anything but good thoughts and good feelings and enjoyable experiences that you can carve out for yourself. So you can pursue happiness and make yourself happy, but don't think of it as, you're on a high, you're out of touch with reality, and you're flying on a magic carpet to some never land that makes you happy. Contentment is really what we want. So if you want the fastest way, is make up your mind you're the boss. You're going to make yourself happy. It doesn't say move to a neighborhood or join a congregation or join a club that'll make you happy. It says the pursuit of your happiness. It's all in your hands. You're the manager of this organization that's your mind and your body. So, as I said, if you make up your mind to think positively, positive things will happen. And on that score, right this minute, make up your mind. You're not going to let your mind drift to past tragedies of your life, past difficulty, past mistakes, past oversights. People wind up in mental institution for good reason. They backed up their car and didn't see their own kid in the back of the car. They thought he reached the door and they let him out 5 minutes ago. And he just wandered to the back of the car and stayed in that area playing with some toy or something. And for the rest of eternity, they can't forgive themselves. So just manage your present so that things like that don't happen. But even if the worst things happen, think of the positive things in your future and make the most of that time that you have available. That still is time that you can enjoy the things that life offers. The fact that you have life, that you're made in the image of God, as God says you are. You know, it also helps. I'm not preaching religion, but those that have a faith in a God and believe everything that He does is right, although we see tragedies all the time, so we can't, unless we rationalize, we can't say God is perfect and good, and because the evidence doesn't appear to be that way. But if you believe that everything He's doing is in our best interest, it makes you feel better. If you feel that by appealing to His good nature and the view that most of us that have faith believe about God, that if we plead with Him and ask for His help, He's there to help us. They say even atheists in a fox, there's no atheist in a foxhole. When they're being shot at, when the enemy is approaching, when there's nothing else they have, and they ran out of ammunition, they resort to prayer and hope. And in many cases, people who have faith are saved by those feelings, those confidences. So the best investment I can advise you to make is first decide that you're the managing director of you and make up your mind you're going to run that operation to be sure that it provides contentment for you and all your loved ones, which will likewise bring you more contentment. And the best, fastest thing to get that help to think that way is get a copy of Happiness Guaranteed, the book that you see the cover of on my screen, on your screen. Happiness Guaranteed or Your Misery Back. It's 365 pages, one page for every day of the year, that gives you the best insights of the best thinkers throughout the ages. And you get it all in this little book. It's not so little. Some people say to get a hernia carrying it around, but it's worth every bit of it. And I'm so positive of that I give you the best deal any offer you receive you'll ever get, and that is if you acquire a copy of this book, if you buy it or you receive it as a gift, and you don't agree that it lifts your life, it improves the quality of your contentment, of your existence, then send back the purchase slip, your purchase slip, and I will refund not only your purchase price, but double your purchase price, and you can still keep the book. And so far I've made that offer ever since the book has come out, and I pay it back to you out of my own pocket, even though I don't receive those funds. Every penny I make, I receive from the sale of this book goes to various charities, scholarships for students, supporting hospitals, supporting poor people who are in poverty and who need help. All the things I could think of, supporting educational efforts, teachers that are underpaid, any good deed that I could think of. So when you buy the book, you're also causing good money, that money to go for efforts that help other people. So I promise you, it's going to help you. And if it doesn't, if you get double your money back right away, you should feel a little more content. Anyway, without further ado, also it has good jokes throughout the book, almost every page. Humor, cause you to smile, to laugh out loud, to giggle, and to share with others. So that's my best advice to you. Live your life with joy. Joy is not happiness. Joy is a mood that you're happy in a sense for the moment. That doesn't mean you're happy. You have a happy life because you could hear a great comedian laugh it up for the length of his show and then leave the show and go back to your state of misery. So instead of taking up any more of your time with this lecture about happiness, let's launch the show and get you towards
the misery.
Towards the misery, towards the depressing facts. So I'm delighted to have Len Carter back again. He does me a great service because he's so brilliant. He graduated every school he went to with high honors, the top of his class. He's an electrical engineer, graduated from the top Ivy League school, Ivy League school, Cornell University, graduated from Harvard Business School, the same school I graduated from, the top business school in the world, I believe, but certainly amongst the top 10 in the world. And he went to another great school, Stanford University, which is a great business school and a great tech school. It's in the center of Silicon Valley, and it's produced more billionaire entrepreneurs with new inventions and creations than almost any other institution in the world. So he's a treasure, and I love it when he joins me. He's obviously a very busy individual because right out of school, McKinsey, the number one consulting firm in the world, hired him to consult for the biggest companies, the most wealthy companies and the most wealthy individuals. So welcome, Len Carter, and let's launch the show and raise the questions and the issues that occurred this week.
Thank you, Morty. Pleasure to be here as always. As we look back over the last week, we see, I think, probably one of the biggest headlines is the very narrow passage of President Trump's big, beautiful bill, which is nicknamed for the all-encompassing tax cut, spending cut package that I think by either one or maybe two votes in the Congress passed, which is probably the narrowest spending bills ever passed, but because of successful lobbying by the president and by the speaker.
And giving it that great name.
Right. Big, beautiful. Better than deficit-inducing and ugly.
The biggest, beautifulest.
Right. That's great. It's always great.
Yeah.
So, so let's talk about, there's a lot of parts to it. So we can maybe spend just a couple of minutes on each one going through what what you think is good or bad or about each one. But I thought before we started, one thing that really confused me that I think people, it's worth discussing for a minute to clarify, because every time I see articles about the impact this bill will have if it gets through the Senate, which hasn't happened yet, but they talk about what the impact on the deficit, but the total outstanding debt the country has now, something 30 something trillion, how much more that would go up. And I kept seeing these numbers, like it would add, according to the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, and then another place, they talk about adding 3.3 trillion to the nation's debt over the next decade. And what puzzled me about that was, how could that be when every year we have a deficit of 2 trillion or so? So how does it add 3.3 trillion over 10 years? Weird. Then I looked into it and I found it was very a creative accounting in the way that what it means.
Well, it's also actions that they're taking that are detrimental to those at the lowest end, because they're taking away Medicare and Medicaid. So there's offsetting
but you might think, when they say it would add 3.3 trillion over 10 years, that if let's say the total debt outstanding today is 30 trillion, that in 10 years it would be 33.3.
No, they mean net.
Mean extra beyond what the deficit would have been already projected. So if they're projecting to already be a deficit of 2 trillion a year, that would be 10 trillion, 20 trillion more over 10 years. What they're saying is, instead of 20 trillion, it would be 23 trillion. So it's going to add 3 extra trillion.
No, but you're forgetting.
But I'm just saying that's
the
how
other part of the bill is cutting all these benefits.
But when they talk, they're netting out allegedly netting out the effects of the spending cuts and the tax cuts.
That's why they get it down to 3.3 trillion.
But how? But over 10 years?
Yeah.
No, but there's on top of that still going to be
every year they're cutting that expense that's been in its budget.
So what do you think, according to that, the total debt would be 10 years from now?
If they didn't cut it.
No, when they say it's going to add 3.3 trillion to the nation's debt over the next decade, what will the debt be in a decade from now? If it's 30 today.
Right now it's 36.
Okay, so
what would be 40, 39?
No.
Yes.
It's not how that's not how they do it. It's on top of what the already deficits are. So if the deficits are projected to be 2 trillion per year, then it's 2 trillion per year plus 3.3 trillion.
No, but you're not considering, I use the word advisedly, the benefit. It's not a benefit. It's a terrible thing. What they're eliminating in costs. So it's instead of being that gross number, it's a net number. So
correct.
It's not that big a. It's not that large.
But even they're admitting the deficit will be 2 or 3 trillion per year.
Not per year.
Yes. Plus the 3.3 trillion extra.
No.
Okay. It's best if we don't have the discussion here. We can, because we're not going to agree on that. It actually is, but we can go talk about that later. Let's talk about some of the actual components in the bill. So
if you let Musk do what he wanted to do, the Doge, it would be down over 10 years, because he was cutting everything without regard for its validity. Employment, welfare benefits, aid to children, aid to the businesses, everything. So it would be a plus from where it is now.
Right.
You're not given
I'm
consideration.
I'm
in the
just saying
bill.
what this bill what the Republicans are saying this bill will do to the total debt.
And does this bill have removal of Medicare and
Yes, not removal.
a reduction?
Yes. Well, that's
major elimination.
Well, we'll talk about that as the first item. It increases work requirements, so you have to work at least 80 hours a month to retain benefits if you're 19 to 64 years old. And starting soon. It was supposed to be starting in 2029. They negotiated down to
but that's
2026.
That's really taking it away from a lot of people, because a lot of those people are incapable of working.
Well, that's going to be this difficult determination is what.
But that's not the major. The major part is they're taking it away from a lot of people that need it and that are working.
So they will. I mean, if you're working at least 80 hours a month, you would still get the benefit. That's what the bill says. You have to work at least 80 hours a month, which is, I guess, like half time, if you're eligible to work, and that's
not for Medicaid.
That's what they said. Yeah.
For Medicaid.
Yeah.
No, Medicaid goes.
Well, that's what the bill says.
Mostly to children.
I mean, it goes to
and people that are
recipients ages 19 to 64 would be required to work at least 80 hours a month to retain their benefits. So people who have low income or don't work.
So they're not taking it away from children.
It doesn't seem that way. So, I mean, I don't really think it's such a problem if you have to work half time to get Medicaid benefits. If you're truly capable of working, I guess it's, how and who determines whether you're capable of working is going to be the sticking point.
But what they don't recognize is there's a disincentive to work, because if you work full time and you don't accomplish a decent level of survival, of a decent life, and you're better off collecting the various benefits that government provides for people that don't have any more than a survival income, then they're going to be unemployed. They're not going to, and they're going to get the benefits. In other words, if I work full time and I still can meet my basic needs for not a luxurious life, but a decent living, then I'm disincentivized to work, and I'm more incentivized to collect the
But you have
multiple benefits.
Under this proposal, you'd have to still work at least half time to get your benefits. So there's only a disincentive not to work less than half. Because if you don't work half time, you don't get any benefits. So at least it's incentivizing people to work half, because if you don't work half time, then you don't get any benefits. I mean, I do agree that the issue is going to be if people really can't work, but the government says, yes, you can, then what happens?
No, but if you work half time and you still get the benefits, you get so little income from the half time you work that the benefits don't.
No, but you could work full time and still get benefits. If you don't make a lot in your full time, you'd still get the benefits. You just have to work at least half time. You can work more.
I'm saying. But that doesn't solve the problem, because if you work half time and you're not getting sufficient income, even with the benefits, then you're not going to work. That's the biggest problem with raising. When Ford raised in 1899, 1900, he raised the income for his employees to $5 a day. And the whole industry, all the major corporations yelled, "Are you out of your mind? You're going to put us all in bankruptcy." And he says, "I have to pay them enough, my employees, at least enough so they could buy my automobiles." So you got to, with all the increases in minimum wages over the years, that each time it said it would wipe them out, the employment rate has increased, the salaries have increased, and they didn't get wiped out. They've grown, and the head of the companies have made it ever more money. So
One of the other campaign promises that, if you give Trump any credit, it is for doing what he said he was going to do. And here he is proposing, and in the bill, no taxes on tips and overtime. So for people who have tips, and there's only certain professions that will apply to, because they don't want employers to reconstitute wages so that you get no tips, salary and all tips. And it will also phase out over income. So if you're say Nassau County police officer who make a lot of money, your overtime above a certain amount won't be tax free. What do you think about giving certain employees a tax break as opposed to others not getting it?
I'd like to see the people at the low, we're talking generally people at the lower end of the income, higher class. So I like to see those people keep more of their income.
Irrespective of whether it's tips or salary, right? I mean, why should a restaurant worker who, just because of the nature of the restaurant business, get special tax treatment when a teacher who doesn't get tips get no special tax treatment? So I would agree that the tax benefit should be a function of level of income.
I think teachers should get a special tax benefit because they're doing important work. And we should recognize.
But there's lots of, nurses do important work. Police officers do important work. So I don't know. It's hard to. I don't disagree that they do important work, but I don't know if it's more important than a lot of other important things. So that's why I would make it based on the level of income.
To induce people to join that profession because it pays so little, I would treat them better than
a New York City cop.
Better than cops, better than nurses, because the others are paid, I think, relatively decent.
Not a New York City cop doesn't make a lot. Starting salary is like $40,000 or something. It's pretty low.
Well, I'm not against their getting more pay, believe me. But I just believe turning over our future generation, our most valuable assets, to people that are incompetent and just go into teaching because it's a job they could get out of college, as I found when I went to Brooklyn College. All those that were doing poorly, the ones that were doing well said, I'm going to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. All the ones that were at the bottom of the class said, I could always become a teacher. That's a terrible, terrible realization that you're getting the worst people to go into instead of the best. So I would give a special treatment for those, notwithstanding that all the others are very important, equally maybe. But I have to say, to me, teaching are like parents that play such a crucial role in the development of society and the elimination of crime and unemployment and all the things that are negative about society. So I can agree with that. Also, it's hard to even keep track of those.
Well,
The tips are very hard to keep track of.
well,
Unless
these
it
days,
goes-
most
unless
are
it goes
credit
on-
cards.
unless it goes on
Most
a credit
are.
card,
I mean,
yeah.
you're right. I mean, it will be some honor system because, but it
If
won't.
it goes on a credit card, yeah, they can
Yeah, I
track.
mean, most restaurants pay, collect the tips through the credit card, so they'll be
And many of
responsible.
them keep that 20%. It says 20% for services, but they don't necessarily give it to their
Yeah, I mean,
waiters.
it depends on.
There's no assurance.
It depends
It
on.
doesn't say it's going to go to your server.
Well, it does, but
It says
whether
that?
they do it or not, yeah,
It says that?
yeah. I mean, there's a line for it. Whether
What does it say?
it says
Services.
or tip for.
I never read it. I never read it, so I'm not sure.
Um,
I don't want to take a position when I don't know.
so
I just thought it says services.
So one of the things that people or that you hear often time is we spend too much, don't save enough as a country. So Trump has these in this bill called a MAGA account for kids, money account for growth and advancement, MAGA, and also called the Trump account, where every baby born from 2025 to 2028 we get an automatic Trump account with a one-time $1,000 credit and parents are allowed to contribute $5,000 a year into the Trump account, and when it comes out, if it comes out for education or buying a house or starting a business, it's not taxed while it's in there. When it comes out, it's taxed at capital gains rate, unless it comes out and is not used for those purposes, and then it's ordinary income, and it has to be used up by the time the kid's 31. So, sounds like an interesting way to get for parents to save.
What happens if they give a newborn baby $1,000 credit?
Well, they deposit $1,000 in the account.
They're gonna.
Yeah.
It's not a credit.
No, it's money.
You just read it as a credit.
Well, I mean, I guess that's when a bank credits you $1,000, they put $1,000 in your account. That's generally what that terminology means. So
no, often a credit is a write-off against some income that you.
In the context of banking, if you tell your bank, I'd like you to credit my account $1,000, it generally means they'll make a deposit
No
into
problem
$1,000.
with that.
But anyway, that's what would happen. $1,000
I'm
appears
happy
in the
with that.
account.
A kid getting a head start in life, that's not prohibited. If it was a big number, maybe I'd question if the number was right. But every kid that's born deserves $1,000 going through the trauma of birth.
And what they're going to have to put up with for the next 90 years of their life.
Facing the challenge of life. Right. They'd be glad to give you back the $1,000 and crawl back into the womb.
Exactly. Once they get to about kindergarten age and learn what they're in for.
Right.
So just a bunch of other tax type of breaks that are in this: car loan interest deduction, seniors.
The car deduction is only for American made.
I thought that's what it was, although what I saw here is that's what I thought it was too.
I think that's what Trump said. He's not giving you the.
Yeah, I mean, it did this.
It's not giving.
Yeah,
the
it had to
deduction
have their
of
final assembly in the U.S. So I guess there's a little nuance where the parts come from, and it also, if you're going to do that, then at least they do phase it out. For income. So if you make more than 100,000 or couples making 200,000, that sort of phases out. They want to increase the cap on the SALT deduction, which is, the state and local taxes, which before the 2017 tax cut, you could deduct your state and local taxes, which for people in high tax states like New York and California, that was a big advantage. And now it was capped, meaning people who pay high real estate taxes couldn't take it. Now they're going to raise that cap, but again, phase it out with income.
I don't think it has anything to do with real estate taxes.
Yeah, no, it's deduction of your real home taxes, your real estate taxes.
I thought it,
state and local taxes. So your local taxes, Nassau County, whatever you pay.
no, I thought it's unrelated to real estate.
No, it is.
It's your income tax.
State and local.
Income.
Well, local tax is not income tax. It's a local tax, whatever you pay for your school, for your county.
Oh, yeah, local.
So it's your state tax, which is your income tax to the state.
I thought it was all
both. It's both.
Because you double tax, you pay in the federal government, and then you pay in the state.
That's why they used to let you deduct it.
Yeah.
But you also could deduct your property tax.
That's fair because not only fair, it's detrimental to the states that need to raise money,
right? Well,
and lose their wealthy.
Exactly. But in the 2017 tax cut put a $10,000 cap on all that. That's not a lot that's a very slow cap.
Right? I know. So that's why a lot of people moved.
It used to be
Florida,
right? But it also included, your
taxes,
your property tax. They were going to increase the child tax credit from $2,000 to $2,500. Increase the standard deduction, state and local tax. Businesses would be allowed to write off the cost of R&D in the year it's incurred instead of
That's
over
a great
time.
Benefit for businesses.
And cost of equipment, it would restore the tax. I guess in 2017, a lot of the measures in this tax bill were already put in place in 2017, but they were just going to disappear.
Right.
And now they're being made permanent, including the biggest of all, which is the reduction in the rates.
Those introductions are not increasing the deficit because they're already in the deficit. From the 2017.
Right. See, that's how they got that crazy 3.3 trillion, because it's already baked in.
Right.
Yeah. They're going to higher taxes for universities and foundations. They would raise the debt ceiling, expand the food stamps. So more food stamp recipients would have to work to qualify for benefits. So again, I think there's some detail in there because, on its surface, it doesn't sound bad that you have to work to get food stamp benefits. But in the situation where, and I'm sure there are, if a family can't work because they have to watch children or something, then that makes it difficult. And now the big increases, spending increases, there's two. One is border security, an increase of $46 billion to modernize and tens of billions to bolster border security, including $46 billion to expand border barrier systems, and then $150 billion additional for defense to build, among other things, the Golden Dome, like Israel's Iron Dome. They want hybrid vehicles to pay a registration tax of $250. The funds would be deposited into the highway trust fund. I mean, why just electric vehicles would pay that. Other cars used.
They said hybrid.
I'm saying, but why would just hybrid and electric? Why not gas cars? Why do they get singled out? As Trump isn't a fan of clean energy.
Is it electric too?
Yeah, electric and hybrid. It's both, but only to those. Why wouldn't a gas car have to pay a tax? They use the highways too, don't they? Right?
If anything,
right. They should pay more.
Right.
So
they're the ones that are polluting.
That's right. But Trump's not a fan of clean energy.
No, he took away the discount
for electric vehicles.
Right.
So
I don't agree with that.
$12.5 billion to modernize the nation's air traffic control system. That's probably a good idea.
That I agree with. I don't agree with increasing the defense spending.
Particularly on, it's one thing if you have a country the size of Israel where you can have a dome, but how do you can't even do it. How do you?
I agree with Eisenhower. I'm very down on, very skeptical of all the money we're spending. And as I say in my book, I don't remember in the last 200 years or any time where any group of members of the family of congressmen, senators, governors have been killed by an attack from an overseas, from some dangerous terrorist group, but every day of the year, they and their family members are dying from cancer, from heart disease, from stroke. So the increase in defense spending to me is totally outrageous. And instead of peace through strength, it's war through more belligerent equipment. Everybody's an enemy. It's almost like we're paranoid. Countries that have never attacked us, China never attacked us. We're interfering with other countries. We have no business telling China what to do about Taiwan. We were just the most contentious country.
Sensibility aside, I'm not surprised because increasing defense spending has always been something that conservative Republicans want to do. What I am surprised at.
That's part of capitalism.
What I am surprised, but here's what I am surprised at, is, that the fact that so many conservative Republicans went along with, a bill that raises deficits.
How much time? 10 minutes?
Yeah. A few minutes. That raise the deficits like this does. I mean, historically, the iron rock principle of conservatism was not to narrow budget deficits and
but not for defense.
But they did approve the bill.
I'm saying.
So what's surprising to me is why conservative Republicans, some did, there were a few, right, because they didn't get all the Republicans to vote this. How did a conservative?
Because
how did they get these guys to vote for something which historically they would never vote for?
Defense is holy grail. You raise it, and everybody's in favor. Nobody ever votes against defense spending. It brings jobs to every
But it's
city.
not just the defense. How do they not insist to cut more on other programs? I mean, they're voting for a bill
They try.
But they didn't.
They tried.
They tried, but then at the end they said, okay.
They can't do it because they don't get any cooperation from the Democrats. But they definitely try. They never try to cut the fence.
But just imagine if this bill were passed by a narrow Democratic majority, all the conservative Republicans would be screaming about how this is so bad for the deficit and this is going to be terrible for our country.
Not if it deals with the defense. Defense is all rich investors, and every congressman brings back jobs and activity.
Well, but
there's not one state that doesn't benefit when they lock it. It's a big country.
But they would want, I would think, more cuts to the social programs.
They do. The Republicans do want that.
Not enough to insist upon it.
They insist, but they can't
get it.
They can't.
But I think it goes to, I give credit to Trump.
They don't cave. They don't.
Because he got all these guys to fall in line. Because it's a populist, there was no changes to Medicare because Trump said no changes to Medicare. It increases the deficit.
He tried, didn't he? Oh, no. When did John McCain do it? No, it's before Trump.
Yeah, way before. But this bill, there's no Medicare changes because Trump said, I don't want to change Medicare. Now, if it were up to, typical conservative ideology,
there are changes.
They would want to do that.
People that are cut out.
Not for Medicare, I don't think. Medicaid, yes, but not for Medicare.
If they don't work?
That's Medicaid.
Medicare, if they don't work 80 hours?
No, Medicaid. That's not Medicare. Medicare is over 65. That's the health. But I look.
They're not cutting Medicare?
It doesn't look like it.
I don't know. I listened to MSNBC and they said they're cutting Medicare. So I don't know why they say that.
Medicare or Medicaid?
Medicare.
Medicare is a health benefit plan for people over 65.
Maybe they're taking out some of the benefits.
I don't know. I didn't.
Within
they in what I read, they didn't. They didn't seem to highlight that. So, and Trump did say, "I'm not touching Medicare."
No, he did say it. But the Republicans didn't say it.
But I think
so far maybe it hasn't done it.
Yeah. But I still think I give him credit because this would not be your typical conservative doctrine, right? Because the typical conservative traditional doctrine of conservatives is to try to have as little as deficit as possible.
No, let all the poor people die.
Right.
Or as little. Have such a big deficit.
Right.
Look, I remember how excited they were when the Soviet Union folded, and they said there's going to be a big
peace dividend.
Right. It's gone up every year since.
So
it never gets cut.
All right. That's
before the Republicans introduced this increase. It already was increased over how much? 10 billion or 100 billion, I think. Before, in the last minute now, they've added another 100 billion. It's like one senator years ago, I forget who said it. He said, you add a billion here, a billion there, and before long it amounts to a few $1 billion, a significant sum.
Yep, that is true.
No, if you add a billion at a time, it doesn't sound like so much.
Right.
But a billion here, billion there.
Adds up. All right.
Anyway, the fun is over. We spent another week together. I love you all. I wish you all good health and a wonderful week. And may each day be better than the day before for the rest of eternity for you and all your loved ones. God bless you. And I hope to see you same time next week, 6:30 Wednesday. Bye.